So we would like you, if you would please speak to us on the specific relationships between Brahman and God.
Between Brahman and God? Brahman must be an impulse of God. If God is the creator and Brahman is the creator, Brahman?
Brahman and God.
Brahma and Brahman and God. There is a God the creator, there is God the maintainer, and God the what? Renewer. God creator. From the level of knowledge of creative intelligence, we know that these are different phases of that basic value of life, which is creative intelligence. And words in different languages do not make any difference. They mean the same thing.
We understand pretty well, we think, the relationship between Brahma and God.
Right.
But we don't very well understand the relationship with Brahman and God. Could you speak on that?
Brahman does not exist as Brahma exists or God exists, the creator. Brahman is the knower of Brahman. Aham Brahma. I am Brahman. And that thou art. You are also Brahman. And that all this is, this whole thing, third person, also is Brahman. So first person is Brahman, second person Brahman, third person Brahman. The entire whole thing is Brahman. This is the knower who knows it. He is Brahman. The knower, it's the knower, it's the knower, the knower, it's the knower.
And then what would be the difference between Brahman and the Absolute?
Brahman and the Absolute, there is a difference in Brahman and the Absolute. See, the Absolute is, like the sap is. The sap is, it's attributeless. There are no differences in the sap. Pink also comes from there, green also comes from there, round comes from there, flat comes from there. All these different attributes come from the attributeless sap. So sap is the absolute of all these expressions. Sap is the absolute life of all the reality lives. So, absolute is. Like the existence of the Absolute, there is no existence of Brahman other than the knower.
Thank you, Maharishi.
Absolute is. Whether one knows it or not, it is there. Its validity thus is not dependent on the knower. If someone recognizes or doesn't recognize, doesn't matter. The Absolute is. It is isness. Like that, there is no Brahman. Brahman is not like the Absolute. Absolute has its validity, whether someone knows it or not. But Brahman has no validity without the knower. Brahman has no validity without the knower. There is a very great difference. When the knower identifies himself with everything, or when the knower knows everything in terms of himself, then he is getting to be Brahman. And when he has actually known everything in terms of himself, then he is Brahman. This in terms of myself, this in terms of myself. This means unity consciousness growing. And because Absolute is that level of life which knows no differences, so that is the field of unity, like vacuum state, flat at the basis of all things. But the appreciation of that more and more fully, appreciation of that completely, infinitely, in its wholeness, that becomes Brahman. And the substance that is omnipresent, everywhere it's there, whether one knows it or not, there is a level of non-changing reality, immortal, eternal. It doesn't change, it's always there. That is Absolute. And the realization of that in terms of oneself is Brahman. So Brahman is always in terms of Brahman is there in terms of the knower. Absolute is there in terms of being.
In a tape entitled Greater Creative Intelligence, you said that God was the whole greater than the sum of the parts being absolute and relative. You said God was neither absolute nor relative, but greater than either or both.
Very good.
Yet we know that also from seed to seed, from unmanifest to unmanifest, through manifest, nothing ever happens. All this is nothing but that, unmanifest, infinite, unbounded, absolute. Now this has caused some confusion in our course. Our question is...
Some confusion.
Just a little.
Some of it is out. As long as it's not mine.
Our question is, does God exist beyond all creation and dissolution as the ultimate reality beyond absolute and relative?
Right. This is what the tape said.
That's what the tape said. Is God then the supreme personality of Brahman?
No. We were distinguishing Brahman in terms of the knower. Knower is Brahman. If we take off the knower, there is no Brahman. This is what was the absolute is, whether one knows it or not. But Brahman is not. Brahman depends on the knower. Knower is Brahman.
Now, the analogy used on the tape was that of the house. And the idea was that the bricks are put together by the workman, and he builds a wall and a floor and a ceiling, and that's what he's building. But then when he's finished, the owner moves in and he has something else. It's a house.
Good.
Now, the question was, if we think of the parts as the relative and the space within as the absolute, and we think of the house as God, if we take away the bricks, all that's left is the absolute. Is this true of God, or does God not depend on the relative, so to speak, to exist?
When we talk of relative and absolute and Brahman, then the word God remains personification of creative intelligence. Creative intelligence. Now, it's the creative intelligence that creates. It's that intelligence which creates like that. Small individual, big individual, the whole thing, galaxies, the whole universe. So, if we were to personify creative intelligence, we can give it a name, and that will be God. God, G-O, go and do. It's just a word which tends to picture something on a more concrete, realistic level. Say God. Say yes. Immediately say, oh yes, the Creator. Where is that? What is that? When we come down to real pinpointing, we come down to the field of creative intelligence, which functions at every level, fine and gross and gross.
Then the ultimate reality is the vacuum state, absolute?
Ultimate reality is that, yeah.
It's absolute.
And from that pure field of creative intelligence,
And this is what you refer to in the science of being as the impersonal God.
Impersonal God, yeah. Impersonal God.
Jay Gurudev.
There's one question which I have with this. I don't know if it's in.
And when in the public you are asked about God, then you say, yes, God we know from our religion. It's a very safe thing to say that. Any question about God in public, sometimes these people from the churches come along to just misguide the audience. They say, what is your opinion on God? We say, we pray. And finished. About God, say, yes, God we know from our religion. From this platform of science of creative intelligence, we go for verifiable results. Physiology, psychology, sociology becomes better and better. Verifiable results. We talk on this platform of science of creative intelligence. About God, we talk when we are in our church or in our pagoda or mosque or temple, in temple. God we know from our religion, and the reality we know from science of creative
Maharishi, what is the relationship between Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Shiva, and the three gunas, if there is one? And there seems to be an obvious relationship, but I don't know what it is.
That again is the personification of the three kinds of activities that we can think of: creation, maintenance of creation, dissolution of creation. And all this reality of all these gods, it comes on to be a very concrete thing on that level of Ritamhara. But on that fine. See, when the first impulse rises from the Absolute, as in you have a flat surface of the pond, completely still, and you throw this leaf like that. It may go with a particular angle like that, with a particular momentum, with a particular force. The ripple that will be set will have its structure, specific structure. You throw some other in some other direction, the ripple that will be created will have its particular formation, different than this, different than this, different than this. Every ripple will have that very faint expression of a ripple, very, very delicate, but still it will have a different character. From this we can understand different forms of what we call expressions of creative intelligence, impulses of creative intelligence, or gods, devatas, in Rig Veda, devata. A wave, very faint wave, but it will always have a specific character, a specific character. These specific characters of different gods belong to their structure. Those who are working in the Vedic research, they know that there is a level where sound and form, they have very great intimate relationship. The form is as the sound is, sound and form. And sound is nothing other than the wave, particular wave. So different forms belong to that particular wave. They are expressions of that small wave and wave of sound. And that wave is faintest at the level where one transcends impulse of the mantra, finer, 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 coming to the finest and disappearing. When it disappears, then we change the tape. There is that proverb, no? Nothing is new under the sun. The same old creation. Every morning is a new dawn, but the same old dawn. People go to sleep, they come up. Next day again go to sleep, come up. So the creation has its germ in dissolution. It stays there. When it's time to come, it comes out. It's a cycle that continues.
The Course in Vegas had a question about, as initiators, what exactly is our connection with the holy tradition? Are we connected directly with it or indirectly? And
very, very directly, as the river is connected with the lake from where it comes out. That is the source of our knowledge. That is the source of our activity. That is the source of our inspiration. Initiator means the emergence from that ocean of wisdom, holy tradition. We do the puja in order to get to that status of a perfect teacher. You have gone through all that? We want to teach from a level which will not make mistakes. And we know how perfect we are in our life. So at least for that moment, we do something so that our awareness gets as near that level of perfection as possible. That perfection, which is the ocean of wisdom, which is just that holy tradition. It's a tradition. And we take our awareness to that and then come out so fresh. It's like a freshly sprouted seed and the yellow sprout. The whole tree is there, but it's a tender sprout. Like that, the whole wisdom is there in our awareness, but it's so tender, and it's on its growth. And in that growth, we whisper the word. And then that the learner receives from the depth of the teacher. And what he receives is a pure fountain of wisdom. In that one word that we whisper, it goes to him like a sprouted seed which quickly grows and brings the fruits. Look at that. It's a very delicate awareness. and all the upheavals settle down in so many layers of Sri Guru Charan Kamalebhyo Namah, so many times and so many times and so many times. All that the individual ego is gets more and more wiped off. And what remains is a very pure stream of wisdom that goes to him in that one word. And that innocently he picks up, and that innocently that takes him to that unboundedness, transcending. And then we have done the work. It's a very, very beautiful procedure. The effect of it is simply marvelous for the teacher. You must have experienced that, no? And that comes automatically without anything. We just go through the procedure, and the procedure takes care of all the mechanics which bring out that effect. It's a very beautiful thing.